an army officer, and just as I was about to leave, they were looking for someone to do some PR work in the army. So I volunteered because I thought, well, if I can put PR on my CV, then I'm more likely to get a job. And so I got a job working with a defence company, electronics company. I knew nothing about electronics, but most journalists didn't know anything about electronics, because most journalists are not specialists in necessarily the publications that they write for. They're arts and humanities graduates, and they just enjoy writing. So my job was to communicate between the engineers, all the techies, and the journalists to get to present the information in a readable and manageable way. And I spent a couple of years there, and then I went, luckily, to work for the Financial Times, the pink paper, the well-known business paper around the world, and I managed all of their centenary celebrations, which was a fantastic experience. You've got to be very calm because lots of things are thrown at you on a daily basis, be it angry journalists, angry clients, problems. Sometimes you've got to stop stories getting to the press, not necessarily encourage them. So you've got to be adaptable in that way. You're not only there to promote, you're there to manage a reputation, to make sure that the coverage is only good coverage. And if there is some bad coverage, how to manage yourself out of that. When I was at the FT, people used to say, what does the FT need a PR person for? Well, it's got advertisers, it's got people who pay the paper on a daily basis, it needs to attract the best recruits. And it's very much the same here at the University of Westminster. You need new students all the time, you need new academics, you need new people to sponsor buildings, research, etc. So it's a very multifaceted approach, and it's a very, very competitive environment in the world, particularly in the emerging markets, with so many students at Westminster coming from Asia, particularly in China and India. They're building up their own universities. So why should they spend all this money coming to the UK? So it's it's a big promotional job. There are a lot of universities, over 120 universities in the UK. Why should people come here to Westminster? There's a very good PR course, but there are good PR courses in Birmingham, Leeds, and in Bournemouth, just examples. So a very competitive environment. Well, Monday morning, put my feet up on the desk, light my first cigar of the day, crack open a bottle of champagne, go to lunch at about 12 o'clock, sleep it off at about 3 o'clock, and then start work. If only! The reality is rather different, but you've got to be reading the newspapers before you come into the office. You've got to be looking at all the media Twitter feeds. You need to be reading all the online material, trying to see what stories are broken overnight and maybe in Asia, where you can pick it up on. We had a story example the other day. We had a client who was an expert on supply chain management. I read on Twitter at 7:30 in the morning that Toyota had withdrawn 7.3 million cars. He was an expert on this type of difficulty that companies can face. We had a comment out by 11 o'clock, and then he had coverage in the Times and elsewhere as a result of it. So you've got to be really quick with the news. And so lots of meetings with clients, lots of meetings with the teams, brainstorming ideas of how we're going to, and it's tough in the financial sector. It's a very dry subject. So you've got to think of creative ideas which are suitable for that particular client. We can't do lots of wacky surveys for these people, but we've got to do things which are fun and interesting. And that's typically how the days of long journalist lunches and PR bosses sitting at their desk with cigars and champagne, sadly, long gone. I think you have to be very creative in the way, particularly, you think up ideas and the way you write. As I was saying earlier, you've got to sell these stories and they've got to be different to other people. So you have to write it in a way that they can almost take the copy that you provided and drop it straight into the paper. So you've got to write to the same standard as a journalist does. So that's quite a challenge. And so it's got to be short, punchy, and it's got to be in the right style and order. And if you give a quote from one of your clients or individuals, that's got to be interesting. They can't just say, I'm delighted that we've won this contract. Well, how interesting is that? Not very. So you've got to think like a journalist and be able to present the information in the most usable way and the most positive way for your client. That's very tough, because I usually take those. And I ask them all about world events, and I want to know if they're familiar with politics around the world, what they're good at, and also what they're bad at. It's amazing how honest people are, and they tell me things which are quite horrific. I'm not very efficient, I'm very disorganized, and my spelling is not great. That's not a way to win a job. So if you ask someone if they ask you if you're bad at it, just say something which maybe, oh, I can be impatient with people who don't work as hard as me. Sounds a bit trite, but if you say it in the right way, you might come across. And if you don't answer a question, how do you deal with it? If you don't know the answer, how do you deal with it? Don't just say, I don't know. You know, be charming. Get yourself out of it, because that's what you're going to have to do when you get into PR. And I've had interviews, and I was asking people about the Likud party in Israel. She never heard of the Likud party in Israel, and she just handled it perfectly. A wonderful, charming smile, and moved on to this. But I have actually been diving in the Red Sea, and I thought it was wonderful the way she just effortlessly moved off the subject, because that bridging technique is what you use. You talk about, if someone asks you something you don't want to talk about, you just bridge off and move into something else.
Is that the smooth topic change?
Yeah, without seeing the gears move.
Brilliant. And kind of to this same subject, according to you, what are the key qualities of a PR person?
I think the key qualities, you've got to be a good communicator, both orally and in writing. I think you've got to have confidence and creativity. I think you've got to have good interpersonal skills with people. You've got to get on with everybody from the receptionist to the chief executive. And it's because sometimes you never quite know who's the big influence in the company. And you've got to be very sensitive. Not means that you burst into tears when the account director tells you that that press release was rubbish, but you've got to understand how people are thinking, often just down the telephone. But if you told them that you say their name and it's wrong, you've got to realise, that just don't upset them any further. Lots of things, but sensitivity is really, really important. And you've got to be a good salesperson. Because everybody thinks that PR literally is gin and tonics, parties and all the rest of it. It's not. It's selling stories in, like we were doing today, and you realise how difficult that can be. I think it's a fantastic, I don't think it's essential. I think it's it shows that you're really motivated to get into this industry, and you have a head start over somebody who's just done English or something like that. But there are some very good people who haven't chosen a good PR degree. We have people with PR degrees, we have people without. But I think it's a great grounding.